Welcome, folks, to Nicholas Henry's Warhammer 40K fan fiction. Characters in this novella: number 1, Conrad Cruz, Knight Lord, Chapter Master, and Primarch. The Emperor of Mankind, Malachar de Sigilet, Imperial Regent. Nexin Orlandrias, Magos Genitor of the Adeptus Mechanicum. Avery X, Magos Digitalis of the Adeptus Mechanicum. Kilbor Hal, Fabricator General of the Adeptus Mechanicum. Zagreus Kane, Fabricator Locum of the Adeptus Mechanicum. James, the First Americanus Operatus. And Jude, the Aspirant Savior. Horus Heresy Retold, number 1. New Legion, One Savior. Chapter 1. Conrad Cruz is on his way back to Terra. After having unleashed an exterminatus upon his homeworld Nostromo. In the wake of Nostromo's destruction, Cruz and the Night Lords Legion were recalled to Terra to explain their behavior. However, on their journey back to Terra, past the Peripherian Gap, past Horonium and Hameront, and past Jana and the dark gates of Ridiol, and into the Segmentium Solar, somewhere between Harkon and Kilostros, heading towards Barak. The Nightfall, an ancient Imperial Gloriana-class battleship, came across a mysterious relic, drifting aimlessly in the void. Aboard the shadowed and brooding warship of the Night Lords, the dim red glow of the aboard the shadowed and brooding warship of the Night Lords, the dim red glow of a command deck flickered as the comms officer's voice crackled through the Vox channel. Officer, my lord, an unidentified object has appeared on the Augur array. It is unlike anything recorded in the ship's databanks. The captain, his armor adorned with macabre trophies, and the dark heraldry of the 8th Legion, stood motionless for a moment, his helm's optics glinting ominously in the half-light. His voice, dripping with disdain and cold menace, echoed through the chamber. And you interrupt me for this triviality? Do you take me for a simpleton who frets at shadows in the void? Give me something useful, or I will have your hide displayed in my quarters. The officer faltered, but pressed on, sensing the danger of withholding information. My lord, the object's trajectory suggests deliberate movement, and it seems to be emitting a low-frequency signal. Deciphering it now. The captain leaned forward in his gauntleted hand, gripping the edge of the hololift display, his voice sharp as a blade. Enough speculation. If it is an enemy, we shall flay them alive. If it is a salvage, it will be ours. And if it is a trap, the fools will learn why they fear the Night Lords. Bring it into visual range immediately, and pray to whatever wretched gods you hold dear that you do not waste my time further. With a curt gesture, he dismissed the officer and turned to his assembled command staff, the faint whisper of laughter, low and mirthless, emanating from his Vox grill. It seems the void offers us a new plaything. Let us see if it screams. As the Nightfall, flagship of the Night Lord's warband, drifted through the void like a predator stalking its prey, the object came into view. A vast container, dark and inert, suspended in the void's internal silence. The faint, cold light of distant stars reflected off its surface, revealing a design both alien and ancient. The container was monumental, its size comparable to a small cruiser. Its structure bore the marks of a civilization long extinguished, crafted of a dull, bronze-colored alloy that seemed impervious to the time and to the ravages of space. Its surfaces were adorned with intricate carvings, Flowing script and symbols etched deep into the metal, glimmering faintly with a light that seemed to come from nowhere. The runes danced with a paradoxical blend of sacred reverence and cryptic menace. Massive stabilizer fins extended from its sides, their edges jagged and scorched as if the container had weathered 1,000 battles. At its apex, a massive locking mechanism fashioned into the shape of a two-headed eagle clutching a blazing sun stood resolute. Despite its weathered appearance, the eagle's motif radiated an aura of unyielding sanctity, a clear marker of the Adeptus Ministerium, or even the God Emperor's personal relic bolts. Faint streams of golden light seeped through microfractures in the alloy, illuminating the surrounding void with an eerie, ethereal glow. As the nightfall drew closer, the ship's augurs began to scream with distortion, overwhelmed by waves of spiritual interference emanating from the relic within. The glow pulsed in rhythmic, almost heartbeat-like intervals, as though the container itself was alive or guarding something that was. Within, unseen to the Night Lords, lay a relic of unimaginable sanctity. Ancient vials of Terran blood belonging to two individuals, encased in a sarcophagus of gilded adamantium. There also lay an exabyte, external hard drive unscathed from the entombment. Could it be the Emperor's blood preserved from his mortal days? And what could possibly be on the archaic data device? Secrets from the Age of Progress? Whatever the truth, it was potent enough to draw the wrath of chaos or the devotion of an entire sector. But the Night Lords would not see reverence or hope in such a thing. To them, it was bait for bloodshed, a trinket to lure prey into the jaws of terror. The captain's voice growled through the command deck. Prepare the harpoons and magnet grapples. This holy vessel will be the trophy fit to break the spirits of 100 worlds, and if it resists, we shall see how well the Emperor's light burns in the cold vacuum of despair. The Nightfall latched onto the container with magnetic grapples, its immense bulk dwarfing the enigmatic artifact. Boarding lines hissed and tightened, forming a bridge between the dread cruiser and the mysterious construct. Inside the cavernous docking bay of the Nightfall, the Night Lords assembled, shadows draped in their ceramite, and adorned with the grim trophies of their reign of terror. The air was heavy with menace, the scent of ozone and blood lingering like a specter. Amidst them strode Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter himself, with gaunt frame, with weathered and shadow that clung to him unnaturally, his jet-black hair falling in unruly strands over pale skin that seemed almost translucent. His void-black armor glinted with streaks of cobalt, adorned with grinning skulls and jagged lightning bolts. His piercing eyes burned with a mixture of madness and cold clarity, their gaze seeming to pierce through flesh and soul alike. He moved silently, his mere presence commanding dread even among his brutal sons. In one hand he carried a wickedly barbed lightning claw, its talons crackling with arcs of energy. In the other hand he held nothing, leaving a hand free as if daring fate to challenge him. The transport pierced the void between ship and container, docking with a shudder that echoed like a death knell. The hiss of repressurization signaled their arrival. Kurz motioned with a flick of his claw, and the Night Lords descended, their presence like a tide of malevolence flooding the container's opening. The main entrance was monumental. Two immense doors crafted of the same bronze-hued alloy as the rest of the structure. As they approached, the runes adorning the surface ignited with a sudden, searing brilliance. The light burned with an intensity that felt holy yet alien, like a hymn sung in a tongue mortals were not meant to hear. A low, resonating hum grew louder, shaking the very air within the container. The doors parted slowly, grinding open with a sound that was equal parts groaning metal and an unearthly wail, as though the container itself resented their presence. Beyond the threshold lay a vast, cathedral-like chamber, its proportions impossibly large for the container's outer dimensions. Stained glass windows, glowing with their own internal radiance, depicted scenes of ancient battles where saints and angels triumphed over monstrous foes. Pillars covered with symbols of the Age of Terra reached toward the domed ceiling, painted with celestial constellations. But this was no sanctuary. At the chamber's heart stood an altar, upon which rested a crystalline sarcophagus. It paused with an inner light. It pulsed with an inner light that seemed to emanate from the relic within. Two glass vials of blood, broken yet still radiating an aura of pure, unyielding faith. Additionally, there lay an exabyte external hard drive beside the vials of blood. The air was thick with a palpable energy, pressing against the intruders like a physical force. Every Night Lord felt it, the weight of judgment, the burning scorn of the Emperor's gaze upon them. Then came the voices, whispered at first like a choir from the warp. They grew louder, filling the chamber with haunting hymns that bore no source. The stained glass figures seemed to move, their angelic visages contorting their expressions of disdain and wrath. The light from the windows grew brighter, casting shifting shadows that danced like predators across the walls. And then they came, manifestations of faith made flesh. From the darkness behind the altar, ethereal forms emerged, clad in ghostly armor and yielding spectral weapons. Their faces were obscured by radiant helms, and their presence burned the eyes of those who dared look upon them. They were no mere illusions. They were shades of the Emperor's saints, drawn forth to guard this sacred place. Kurz's voice broke the tension, low and rasping, yet filled with a cruel certainty. A test, then. The Emperor always loved his games. Come, my sons, let us teach his angels the price of defiance. As the battle-ready Night Lord stormed into the vast chamber, the truth revealed itself with infuriating clarity. The ghostly warriors flickered, their radiant forms distorting into jagged bursts of light and static. The hymns, once deafening, degraded into garbled vox screeches. A moment later, the guardians dissolved entirely, leaving only a series of antique hollow projectors embedded within the chamber's walls, their machinery whirling into protest from centuries of neglect. Conrad's Kurz stood motionless, his talons still crackling with power as the truth sank in. His lips curled in a snare, his fury simmering just beneath the surface. He turned slowly, his blackened eyes narrowing at the chamber, now silent, save for the faint hum of the relic's containment field. A farce! The Emperor's precious relics guarded by trickery. Holograms to ward off intruders. This is his great legacy. This is the faith he preaches. His words dripped with venom, yet behind him lingered a flicker of something else, perhaps resignation or a cold amusement at the absurdity of it all. He strode forward to the crystalline sarcophagus, his talons casting sparks as they brushed the containment field. The Age of Progress relics within gleamed defiantly, their aura palpable even through the ancient technology that encased it. Kurz's talons retracted with a metal hiss as he motioned to his warriors. Enough of the charade. Recover every detail, the ruins, the carvings, the relics. I want every scrap of this chamber documented and loaded aboard the Nightfall. The Emperor highly values relics, and I will exact a fair price. The Night Lords moved with disciplined efficiency, their armored forms ghosting through the chamber as they dismantled projectors and secured artifacts. Kurz remained at the altar, his gaze fixed on the relics, his mind already plotting. Back aboard the Nightfall, the relics were secured in the dreadnoughts of the flagship, their aura of sanctity a stark contrast to the ship's oppressive darkness. Kurz retreated to his private chambers, deep within the bowels of the vessel. There, amidst the shadows, he brooded over his next move. The Emperor, in all his magnanimity, had always cast a scrutinizing eye on the 8th Legion, their methods, their purpose, and their Primarch. None of it ever sat comfortably with the throne. But this discovery could shift the balance. The relics were infutable proof of the Imperium's hypocrisy. Holy artifacts left to rot under the false guardians, yet they were also precious beyond measure to the faith of billions. Kurz saw their value not as tools of worship, but as weapons of manipulation. Weeks later, the Nightfall plunged into the Sol system. Its arrival, a shockwave that rippled through the Imperial Palace's augur networks, summoned to account for his actions during the Nostramos Exterminatus. Kurz arrived not as a penitent son, but as a predator with its prey already ensnared. The confrontation in the throne room was inevitable. Surrounded by the towering custodes and the indomitable presence of Malcador the Sigillet, Kerr strode forward, the relics carried behind him on anti-grav platforms. The Emperor sat upon his golden throne, his inscrutable gaze fixed upon his wayward son. Kurz knelt, but it was not submission. His movements were deliberate, his voice sharp and laden with scorn. Father, you summoned me to answer for my crimes, yet I bring before you these treasures. Forgotten relics of the age of Terra, abandoned to the void, guarded by lies and shadows. Is this the faith you would have us champion? Is this the glory you promised? The room fell silent as the Night Haunter gestured towards the relics. The vials and hard drive glimmered, their light a stark contrast to the darkness Kurz carried with him. I offer these to you, not as an apology, but as a reminder of what we are, of what you made us. Use them as you see fit, but remember, even your light cannot pierce every shadow. And some shadows, his voice dropped, filled with a terrible certainty, are eternal. Malcador the hero shifted uneasy, his expressions unreadable. The Emperor, ever silent, regarded Kurz with the weight of millennia in his gaze. Whether he saw defiance or desperation in his son's act, none could tell. But the relics, shining with the hope of the Imperium, now lay in the Emperor's hands, wrested from the cold void by the most broken of his creations. And in that moment, Conrad Kurz's gambit was complete. The throne room fell silent, the tension between father and son palpable. The relic's golden light cast long, flickering shadows across the chamber, their sacred glow a stark contrast to the cold, predatory form of Conrad Kurz. He knelt before the Emperor, his pale face a mask of defiance and cunning. Around him, the custodians stood like statues, and Malcador watched on with expressions ranging from disdain to quiet fascination. The Emperor of Mankind, seated upon his golden throne, radiated an aura of unimaginable power. His visage was inscrutable, his gaze burning with the weight of countless ages and infinite wisdom. When he spoke, his voice resonated, not merely in the air, but within the very souls of the present. Conrad, my son, you come before me not as a repentant soul, but as a shadow bearing gifts. You kneel, yet your heart remains standing, unyielding. Do you think I am blind to your motives? That I cannot see the darkness coiled within you? The room seemed to tremble with the weight of his words, yet Kurz remained still, his head bowed slightly, his expression unreadable. You have brought me these relics, ancient treasures of the Imperium, and for that I grant you my gratitude. They are a reminder of what we strive to build, a galaxy united in faith, strength, and purpose. And yet their return only sharpens my disappointment. The Emperor leaned forward, his eyes blazing with a light that no mortal could withstand. His tone, though even, carried an edge of sorrow. Your legion, my 8th Legion, was created to bring justice to the lawless, to instill fear in those who would defy the Great Crusade. But what you have wrought is not justice, it is terror. No order but chaos. The Night Lords have become a mirror of your own torment, Conrad, a reflection of your pain and despair. You yield fear as a weapon, but you let it consume you. You do not see the abyss into which you lead your sons? For the first time, Kurz shifted, his fist clenching as the Emperor's words pierced him. Yet he said nothing, his pride forbidding interruption. I understand the burdens you bear, the visions, the certainty of your own fate. It weighs upon you like a shroud, but that is no excuse for what you have become. You speak of an inevitability as though it absolves you, but it does not. Your path, your choices are your own to make, and they shame me. The chamber remained still, the weight of the Emperor's judgment suffocating. Then his tone softened, though it remained no less commanding. And yet you have not strayed so far that I cannot see the light within you. Dim though it may be, this act, this offering, it shows me that you are not beyond a redemption. For all your flaws, Conrad, you remain my son, and I have not forsaken you. The Emperor gestured towards the relics, their golden glow intensifying. You have returned these to me not out of loyalty, but out of calculation. And even so, their recovery is a deed of merit, one I am willing to acknowledge. I will grant you this forgiveness, but hear me well, Knight Haunter. My patience is not infinite. The path you tread is perilously close to the one I would see destroyed. Rein in your legion, or I will do so myself, and you will not enjoy the manner in which I do it. He leaned back, his eyes softening slightly as though granting a reprieve. You are free to leave Terra unpunished. Return to the void, to your campaigns, and prove to me that my faith in you is not misplaced. But know this, if you fail me again, there will be no gifts, no words, no relics that will shield you from my wrath. The chamber seemed to exhale as the Emperor's words concluded. Kurz raised his head, his pale eyes meeting his father's gaze. For a moment there was a flicker of something, a fleeting shadow of respect or perhaps relief. Rising to his feet, he gave a curt bow, his voice low and edged with bitterness. As you command, Father. Turning sharply, he strode from the throne room, his shadow thralling behind him like a storm cloud. The Night Lords followed in silence, their footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. And so Conrad Cruz and his sons departed Terra, their path once again their own. But in his heart, the Night Haunter knew this was no absolution, no true absolution. It was a reprieve, a stay of execution. For while the Emperor may have forgiven him, Kurz could not forgive himself, nor could he silence the visions that whispered of his ultimate fate. Aboard the Nightfall, Conrad Kurz and his legion vanished into the cold void, leaving Terra behind. In their wake, the relics remained within the secure vaults of the Imperial Palace, their golden light undiminished amongst the unyielding grandeur of the Emperor's sanctum. The chamber where they were kept was a place of immense reverence, accessible only to the Emperor himself, his Imperial Regent Malachar the Siligate, and the custodian guard sworn to protect the throne. The Emperor stood before the relics, his gaze inscrutable as the light of the artifacts bathed him in a holy glow. Malcador, clad in his ever-present robes of muted black and gray, joined him, the weight of his psychic presence a dim echo of the Emperor's own. Together they contemplated the treasures recovered by the Night Lords, their minds weaving through possibilities. These artifacts, Malcador, their craftsmanship is not unfamiliar to me. They are relics of the Age of Progress, perhaps even older. This hard drive, he gestured towards the data device suspended in the crystalline sarcophagus, was forged in the technologies of the Imperium's infancy, a machine born by early Terrans. Its significance is beyond measure. Malcador nodded, his lined face a mixture of curiosity and caution. Indeed, my lord, yet I sense more to these relics than mere antiquity. Their aura, it resonates, but not purely, with the warp. It is something deeper, something layered, a latent power, perhaps. Or knowledge hidden beneath their physical form? The Emperor's expression remained impassive, though his gaze lingered on the vials of blood. There is power here, but it is dormant. The vials of blood's purpose was not yet known, but perhaps they could be a beacon, a symbol of unity and faith in the Imperium's darkest hours. Such symbols hold weight, Malcador, especially among mortals. But I suspect you are correct. There may be more to these relics than their history. Their recovery may not have been mere coincidence. Malcador tilted his head, the faintest flicker of a smile on his lips. The Night Hunter's timing is always suspect. Whether by his foresight or his malice, he has placed these relics into our hands for reasons that remain shrouded. It would be prudent to ensure no unexpected surprises lay within. The Emperor turned to his regent, his golden gaze piercing yet calm. You suspect traps? Malkadar shook his head slowly. Not in the conventional sense, but artifacts of this age, forged in the crucible of humanity's expansion into the stars, they often carry secrets that could be dangerous if mishandled. We cannot leave such things unexamined. The Emperor was silent for a moment, his thoughts extending far beyond the confines of the chamber. When he spoke, his voice was resolute. Then we shall summon the Mechanicum. Let them bring their finest magi, their most advanced tools, and their most devoted priests. They will probe these relics to their fullest extent, scientifically, spiritually, and technologically. The vials, the data device, the altar, the container itself, every detail will be cataloged, every function understood. Malkador's eyes narrowed, his tone measured. The Adeptus Mechanicus will no doubt clamor for access. They will see these relics as manifestations of the machine god's will. Their reverence may blind them to the true purpose of our inquiry. The Emperor's expression hardened. Then I will ensure they understand their place. They are to examine and experiment, nothing more. Their zealotry will not be allowed to interfere with my will. Malkador inclined his head, his voice a whisper laced with caution. And if these relics hold knowledge of him, of the warp, or worse, if they are corrupted in their long solitude? The Emperor's gaze returned to the relics, his tone unyielding. Then we shall purge them, as we would any threat to the Imperium. But if they hold knowledge that can aid humanity, I will see it used. Within hours, the Adeptus Mechanicus was summoned. The red-robed magi arrived in solemn procession, their forms adorned with cog-tooth icons and intricate circuitry. Among them were Calbor Hall, Fabricator General, and Zagus Kane, Fabricator Locum of the Adeptus Mechanicum, figures of renown within the Mechanicum for their mastery of archaeotech, and a retinue of tech priests sworn to secrecy under the watchful eye of the custodes. The relics were moved to a secure chamber within the vaults, their golden glow illuminating the dark, sterile halls as the Mechanicum's instruments came to life. Incantations to the Omnissiah filled the air as salvo skulls hovered, recording every rune and symbol. Machines hummed, their auspex scanners probing the depths of the artifact's physical and psychic signatures. The Emperor and Malkador observed from a vantage point, their thoughts unspoken but aligned. What secrets would the relics yield? Would they offer salvation, knowledge, or danger? Only time and the relentless scrutiny of the Imperium's greatest minds would tell. In the sanctum of the Imperial Palace's strategium, the air hummed with tension. The chamber was filled with the gathered minds of the Imperium's greatest strategists, scholars, Mechanicum representatives, their faces obscured by the interplay of shadow and golden light. At the center of this gathering stood Calbor Hal, Fabricator General of Mars, his form a shifting amalgam of flesh, metal, and machine spirits. Beside him loomed Archmagos Zagus King, the brilliant and stoic high-ranking tech priest, whose reverence for knowledge was matched only by his loyalty to the Emperor. Before them, the Emperor of Mankind sat up, his obsidian throne, radiating an aura of command so absolute. Before them, the Emperor of Man sat up, his obsidian throne, radiating an aura of command so absolute it silenced all but the boldest minds. At his side stood Malkador the Sigilate, a shadow of power and wisdom, his expression a careful mask as Calbor Hal began his report. By the grace of the Omnissiah And in the combined intellect of the priesthood of Mars, we have completed our analysis of the relics retrieved by the 8th Legion. His voice was a metallic rasp overlaid with the binary cant of his mechanicum augmetics. The results are extraordinary. Calborhal gestured a claw-like hand. A hollow display materialized in the air, projecting detailed schematics and genetic mappings. The 2 vials of blood, though fractured, contained viable remnants of Terran DNA. Their origin predates even the Unification Wars, and their genetic composition is unlike anything in the Imperium today. These samples are not simply human. They represent superior genetic profiles optimized for adaptability, intellect, and resilience. The individuals of such caliber would have been anomalies, even during the Age of Terra. Archmagos Kane stepped forward, his tone measured but laced with curiosity. We have identified the genetic profiles within these samples. The donors were historical figures. One, designated Donaldus Triumphus, a political architect of unparalleled charisma and divisive strategy. The second, Aliomus Muscus, an innovator industrialist whose genius spanned multiple disciplines of human progress. Both represent the apex of their respective traits, leadership and innovation. The chamber remained silent as the display shifted, showing the fragmented data extracted from the ancient storage device. Calborhal says, the storage device held an exabyte of information, a treasure trove of knowledge from the Age of Terra, technological blueprints, economic models, sociological studies, and advancements in medical and genetic sciences. With this, the Mechanicum could usher in a new era of technological enlightenment for the Imperium, should you command it. The Emperor's golden eyes gleamed with an unfathomable light as he regarded the relic's implications. His voice, when it came, was a quiet storm of authority. These relics are not mere artifacts. They are tools. The genetic profiles represent the best of humanity's potential, untainted by the warp or the gene curse of the traitors. The data files are a repository of human progress, capable of accelerating our plans for dominion over the stars. He turned to Malcador, who had been silent, his expression contemplative. Malcador says, "My lord, there is danger as well as promise. The genetic profiles are extraordinary, yes, but they are not without anomaly. Their uniqueness may bring as much unpredictability as strength, and the data, while invaluable, may carry fragments of knowledge best left forgotten, dangerous even to those who would yield it for noble intent." The Emperor nodded slowly, his thoughts piercing the veil of the present to consider the long shadow of the future. "Then we must wield this power carefully. The genetic profiles of Donaldus and Alumus shall form the foundation of a new gene seed, designed to produce Astartes who embody their strength, leaders and innovators, unyielding in battle and unmatched in strategy. A new legionaries, Astartes, forged in secrecy to act as my sword and shield in the dark times to come." Malcador inclined his head, though his tone remained wary. "In the Mechanicum, my lord, this knowledge will make them more powerful than ever, perhaps dangerously so." The Emperor's gaze swept to Calborhal, who remained silent, in his mechanical form still as a statue. The Mechanicum shall steward this knowledge, but under my blessing and command. They will return to Mars and begin the process of utilizing the genetic profiles to create this new legion. The data files shall be studied and applied, but only within the bounds I dictate. Their work shall remain secret, known only to this council. He rose, his golden armor gleaming in the chamber's light. "Calborhal, you are entrusted with this task. Do not fail me. This is not merely an opportunity, it is a responsibility. Should the Mechanicum falter, or should they deviate from my will, they will be brought to account." Calborhal bowed low, his voice resonating with mechanical reverence. "By your will, Omnissiah, it shall be done." As the Mechanicum representatives departed with the relics, the Emperor and Malcador remained in the silent chamber. The relics implications loomed large, their potential vast and fraught with risk. The Emperor's expression betrayed no doubt, though Malkadar's brow furrowed as he spoke softly. This path, my lord, is fraught with peril. Secrets such as these often breed rebellion as much as strength. The Emperor's voice was calm yet resolute. Then we must tread carefully, Malkadar. For the sake of humanity's future, there is no other way.